All right. Ram, thank you so much for joining us today. As we start, can you say a few words about um, your current role and the company, the organization?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Misha. So, Ramachandra Hegde, I go by Ram, serving as global CISO for Genpact. Been with the firm almost 12 years now. Genpact is a spin-off from GE. We're a professional services firm. Started with a focus on finance and accounting, supply chain, running operations for large companies, and has now is a leader in advanced technologies. So we have taken our insights on our domain, the intelligence around data, the process intelligence, and now we're applying it to AI. It's a fairly large company. Employee count wise, we have 140,000 of us
Oh,
in 30 countries.
wow. 30 countries.
That's right.
And where's headquarters?
Uh, uh, Headquarters of CEO sits out of New York. Yeah.
Hmm, amazing. Well, conceptually, it's a BPO, business process outsourcing, right? That's the business, the main business?
Yeah, I think we have evolved from there. While we still have a lot in terms of what we call digital operations, it's really evolved from just being a pure play around process and productivity, where there's now a lot of infusion of data and advanced technologies.
Mhm.
So we really position ourselves as a professional services firm, doing a lot more in technology and in data and
So
insights as opposed to just running operations.
it seems like AI will bring such a tremendous opportunity in that space. So it's
That's
interesting.
right. And again, for AI to deliver the right outcomes, we all know it's about the data, it's about having the right processes. So that's where we bring a lot of value, not just in terms of AI and algorithms, but really the data that's feeding it and then the process intelligence to deliver the outcomes.
Certainly. And your role, is it securing the corporation and the process internally, or is it more outward looking towards more kind of your clients, or maybe both?
It's internal. So there's a separate division which focuses on delivery of security services. But in my internal role, there's a big element of trust because we have connectivity with our clients. And then before they get to trusting us to run operations or managing the data, they obviously need to have a sense of comfort. Um,
Interesting. Interesting. Well, it's interesting to, I guess, running cybersecurity in an organization with 140,000 people comes with its own challenges,
right.
and it's a very interesting conversation. But I want to kind of go back in time and talk a little bit how you started in cybersecurity. What was your first kind of gateway? What was the first door that you knocked on?
Right. Well, it was a series of accidents, I think, in terms of early interest in sports, then in business. And I ended up doing my chartered accountancy in India.
Hmm.
But to dial back a little bit, while I was doing my bachelor's in accounting, I also dabbled with computers, did a course, was very fascinated early on with computers. So
Hmm.
fortunately, the firm where I did my chartered accountancy, the equivalent of the CPA in the US, it's an affiliate of PwC. They had a wing focused on what was then at that time known as computer auditing. So very quickly, I latched on to that, specialized in computer audit, moved to it full time, worked with KPMG, further in more broader engagements on computer auditing and information risk management, and then subsequently switched over to information security.
Interesting, fascinating. So accounting, um, auditing,
Yeah,
cybersecurity. It's an interesting path. And you mentioned sports. What did you play?
table tennis. I was playing for
Interesting.
my college and university, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting. You have some working for a company that's in 40 countries and kind of going through the stages of your career that gives you a very interesting vantage point. And I feel you have a lot to share and advice you can share with someone who's maybe a little bit more junior, maybe even in college, just trying to figure out what to do with their life, or maybe someone who is trying to make a switch, go from technology, from IT to cyber. Um, what would be advice for them? What should they what are the two, three things they should focus on right now to set them up for success down the line based on
Right.
your experience?
So I would separate this out into two dimensions. One sort of in general, and then the second maybe a bit specific to cyber. So in general, I think uh, the two things that come to mind is it's so hard to predict nowadays in terms of what's the right or a good career choice 5 years, 10 years down the line, right? So I think the key is to develop your skills around learning and curiosity, um, and having that attention to detail that allows you to develop expertise, even mastery, and that also allows you then, if you need to pivot, to go from one field to the other.
Hmm.
How that applies to cyber, I think, is you are going to need to understand a variety of technologies which are ever evolving. So if you have that skill, it becomes much easier for you to stay on top. The second, I think, really is uh, resilience, and not from a cyber perspective, but from a personal resilience. Again, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anticipated turbulence when you look at the macro view of the world. So I think you do need to have that belief that yes, you will take some hard knocks, but you, as long as you believe in yourself, you dust yourself off, pick up, and keep going, take the learnings, and then move on. You'll be all right. No journey is ever going to be straight, linear. There will be ups and downs. So I think that is a very important skill. And then to have the long view. When someone is just starting out now, they have 20, 30 years easily. So don't get disheartened if there's a setback. Now, it might be significant, but over time, I think as long as you have the drive, as long as you keep learning, improving, figuring out what you're good at, and I would, there's a lot of debate around do what you're passionate about, right? I think the twist to that is do what you're good at, because you don't know really, you might end up, unless you experiment, you might not find the thing that you realize, okay, I'm really good at it. And then maybe the passion for that grows on you. So I would take that advice of do what you're passionate slightly differently, to say figure out what you're good at, be very good at what you do, keep experimenting, and I think you'll have a range of capabilities that you'll discover, one of which hopefully works out really well for you.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So, I guess a follow up question: cybersecurity these days is such a vast field. You have so many different applications, from GRC to pen testing to red teaming to being part of the SOC team. What's your advice? Is it advisable for someone to pick one area that someone can be curious about or interested in for an extended period of time and just go deep on that one area, or maybe try to get exposure to many different areas and then pick one, so get kind of a more seasoned view. Also, some people think that acquiring certifications is kind of a path to career success. Other people say that's really finding the right mentor or several mentors who help navigate the career choices, or maybe internal politics a little bit better, is the key to their success. What is your thought on some of these forks on
Right.
the road, so to speak? What do you think would, from your vantage point and from your experience,
Right.
uh, what would you advise?
Yeah. I think the key thing is to maintain openness and flexibility, because I've seen a lot of people go in saying, I want to be an expert in this. And if that becomes obsolete, what are you going to do? Or a lot of people go in saying, I don't like managing people, I want to be an individual contributor. And guess what? Maybe it grows on them. So as you evolve in your career, your perspectives and interests even change. So I think one, it's important to keep an open mind. And if you're starting out, I think certainly yes, go deep into one area, become an expert. So you develop that skill of going deep, grasping new things. And even if you feel this is your home, this is where you feel satisfied, I would still encourage that person to then experiment, try on new things in small and big ways, and maybe you'll find it grows on you. Um, and if at that juncture you think 5, 10 years out, I'm looking for a position like a CISO, then uh, one, it's important, yes, get exposure to as many things as you can, but I would say, regardless of whether you want to become a CISO or not, it's super critical to focus on three things. One is communications, and for us in technical areas, it's especially critical to be able to abstract the jargon away and then speak in plain English terms. Second, especially if you're and in most almost every role, is understand the language of risk. Yes, you might deal with vulnerabilities and so on, but you need to be able to step back and think and say, how does this really um, work in terms of risk? How risky is it? And to do a good job in articulating risk, you need to understand the business, right? So if you're in a company, take the time out to really go talk to people in operations, visit whether it's your factory or where work actually gets done, which can be slightly challenging now with a lot of remote work, but spend time understanding the business. And regardless of what role in cyber you are, if you understand the business, how your company runs, how it makes money, you understand the risk element, what's really important, how a security issue might translate into impact, and you keep your technical skills up to date, you're on the right track.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. It's very helpful. Switching gears a little bit, one one reason why I'm so fascinated by cybersecurity that it never stands still, and it
Yeah.
seems every day you wake up and tune in to the news. There's something going on, whether it's Coinbase is getting hacked, or Mark and Spencer, or the geopolitical implications, the regulatory environment is changing. There is always something going on, and it. I can imagine it can be a little bit confusing, like what's important, what's not important. And you said in the middle of a global company that's really kind of vast. From your vantage point, your perspective, what are top three themes, threats, developments that are top of mind for CISOs at your level, or maybe organizations that you're dealing with?
Right. So I would say an overarching theme is resilience, because of all the things you mentioned. Um, Despite whatever we do, I think you have to assume that at some point you will be in a position where you will have to recover and heal. So resilience, right from developing resilient architectures to focusing on recovery and all of the different aspects of it, not just the technical recovery, but crisis communications and prioritizations of your business and so forth is important, and I think will just continue to grow. It's simple. Our dependency on technology continues. Unfortunately, the trajectory of technology is these threats remain there. We are having these vulnerabilities. So you have to think resilience. And the other two, I would say, across all these changes, whether it's AI or new vulnerabilities or so forth, um, uh, we spend a lot of time thinking about threat modeling, which is really thinking of, all right, how will a risk in a technology manifest? It's AI today, could be something else tomorrow, could be new attacker tactics. And translating that into, all right, here are things that are changing. How do we reassess and realign our controls? Maybe it's a reprioritization, maybe it is introducing new controls, maybe it's focusing on different things. So this whole theme of modeling your threats and changes and translating that into the right response and controls. And the third is a focus on control validation. Um, Sounds extremely basic, but it's so important. And I always try to draw an analogy with health. If you want to be healthy, it's like do the basics, right? Eat well, sleep well, do exercise. And yes, you can have fancy treatments and have very expensive solutions and diets. But for most people, if you do those 4 or 5 things continuously well, uh, I suspect you'll be better off. And it's very hard to do all of it day in and day out, right? You're inevitably going to have a day where you don't sleep well, or you're traveling and you end up eating food you wouldn't otherwise. But it's key to do those basics consistently day in and day out and sustain that. So our focus is on control validation. It is trying to find more and more ways of saying, okay, these are the controls we have.
Mm-hmm.
Large company, very dynamic environment. There's going to be changes. There's going to be drift. Let's make sure we do whatever it takes to get that continual assurance that the controls are operating as intended. And I believe if you do that and you're continually tuning your controls to what's relevant based on the threat modeling, you'll end up in a good place.
Certainly. Well, it makes sense. It's fascinating that sometimes people get so excited about this new technology, the new shiny penny, and really forget that basic hygiene is lacking. Basic hygiene is where you get in trouble. And sometimes you see, I'm not sure if you saw this, but there was a Senate hearing of a major healthcare company that got breached, and they're really they were digging, even though I don't think they possess very extensive cybersecurity experience. They were really drilling and trying to figure out how it happened, and they really came to a realization that multi-factor authentication was unenabled, and that was a big part of the reason why an attacker got to the environment, and then kind of it cascaded, and they spread laterally, and that's how it basically cascaded from
there. And I think the key point back to the threat modeling and the control architecture is also the layers of defense, right? So there's a lot of talk about that you need to be right all the time. Attacker needs to be right only once. I think a better version is that if you have your controls and layers done well, the attacker has to be right like so many times. You're creating many opportunities for you, even if one control breaks, to have that second layer of defense, and you get yourself extra time to respond and react. So I think I would inject the having the right layers of controls into that mix.
Well, it makes sense because you mentioned resiliency, right? So if the attacker is right, but you're resilient, then the attacker being right is not going to hurt you that much, or it's not going to bring down the whole organization where you'll spend weeks or months recovering, right?
Buy yourself time, increase the cost of the attack, and it should work in your favor.
Exactly. Ram, I know. Thank you for providing your perspective. It's really very interesting. What's your sense? What's in your view, from your perspective? What is the future? What is the future holding for us in terms of? It's if I go the same question, but 12 months from now, 18 months from now, if you had a crystal ball and you can see clearly into the future, CISOs, global CISO, Fortune 500 CISOs, 12 months from now, what are 2, 3 themes, problems, technologies, regulations that everyone is going to be thinking about, talking about, and being anxious about, I guess?
Right.
From your view.
I wish I had that crystal ball. Would do a lot of interesting things with it, but jokes aside, I think while there are a lot of things which are hard to predict, some themes which are very clear right now is our dependence on technology is not going to reduce. It's just going to keep increasing, and therefore the risk and the need for resilience will keep going up. I think you see the dynamics around geopolitics and um, the legal constructs around bringing criminals to justice, around liability for software reliability. Those, I think, are big uh, equations. Hopefully, they will turn in the right direction, but maybe not. Um, so as long as they're not, this problem is will continue to be a difficult problem to solve, and we just have to gear up for that. Then, especially when you look at things like AI and code, and you look at open source and at code security and so forth, I think in some ways you're going to see problems get worse. I think you'll see the issues around deepfakes getting worse as the technology improves. So I think in specific areas you can tease out some predictions, but more broadly, it is really the way to contract is really double down on resilience, stay on top, um, do the modeling, translate that into how you react in terms of layers and of controls, and keep validation. So the same themes, but I think they will serve any organization well on these macro trends.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Ram, I have a little bit of a self-serving question. Aphinia was designed to be an ambient network for cybersecurity executives, so you can connect with peers. And the ethos and the reason for this is that um, we think of cybersecurity as a team sport, and everything is changing so fast. And if we can reach out to someone and get the insight about the problem, a decision, a vendor from someone who's a trusted peer, we thought there was value in that. So this is effectively is the reason why we exist. And there's a number of different initiatives that we do: the CISO Wire, the email newsletter, we do virtual events, in-person events. Um, but we always try to find new things to make ourselves useful for the community. And I know there are other choices. There are other organizations, and some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. Um, and I'm sure you're probably part of some of the, whether it's ISACs or other societies, other communities, conferences, which is, I think it's great. It's absolutely fine. But what would be your advice for us? What are two, three projects or areas where you think there is lack? Whether it's how to work with startups, cybersecurity startups, how to um, find a speaking role at a conference, how to deal with stress, how to find a new CISO job. Like, what are some of the projects, some of the topics where you think um, there is a gap in the market that we, as a community of 2,000 professionals,
Right.
can can fulfill? And also, so this question number one, and as you were thinking about it, the question number two, I guess, some of the conferences or some of the events that you've attended for cybersecurity executives, what are some of the things that you like that you wish we at Aphinia had as well and we could replicate?
Right. So I'll try to answer that across two dimensions. And then again, I don't think there's anything new. It's just things which I've seen work well. One is when you have a community that meets in person. And I say that because virtual, it's increasingly hard, I think, for people to stay engaged. It's easy to get distracted, and nothing beats the quality of in person.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, if you have a smallish event, it allows for more interactions. It's always a balance. But if you're doing in person events over time with the same group, that allows that group to have build more trust. You have then deeper conversations. People open up and share more. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good way to drive the depth of the community, and
Mm-hmm.
and then it's really about what you bring to the forums. Obviously, the exchange and the informal benchmarking is extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So is getting external speakers to um, offer different perspectives, bring in speakers who can help that group focus on aspects like leadership. And I think it's what I don't see a lot happening, which I think we should do more as a profession, is get in risk leaders outside of cyber, right? Get in a supply chain expert. Um, because sometimes I feel we become too insular and you tend to develop this herd mentality. So if you get in someone who's dealing with a different risk, and they sort of put us in give us a perspective that, look, I know you guys think cyber is the greatest thing in the world, but by the way, you have all these 20 other risks we deal with. I think getting that exposure to things outside of cyber is extremely important, outside of the usual suspects of, okay, yes, you do need to talk of communications and all of that, but getting experts in other areas, I think we'll find a lot more in common and a lot more to learn, and I think it helps to break some of this thinking which can tend to get siloed.
Certainly. Well, to your point, we're big believers in small scale events. We usually host them before major conferences like our SEO Black Hat that's coming up in Las Vegas. But we'll also host them more in kind of bespoke version. There's one in New York, October 15th. So if you're in town, we would love to have you. And there, to your point, it's exactly that. It's small format, I don't know, 20 people, very vendor light, focused on engaged conversation that's not that's on the topics that are sourced from the community, so topics that people care about. So would love to, if you're in town, I'll send you a calendar invite. So
Sure.
would love to get your perspective and see how we do. And once you experience our in-person event, would love to continue the conversation and explore how we can make it better, and
Yeah.
hopefully for future ones, to your point, invite experts from outside of cyber, whether it's supply chain or finance or HR, because I think all of them are adjacencies.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity. Ram, thank you so much. This was super. This was very insightful. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? What's the best way to connect?
LinkedIn. That's kind of the only social media platform I use. So yeah.
Same for me. It's I'm not a Twitter fan or Facebook. It's certainly the only one that I use. Well, Ram, thank you so much for your time, and I certainly hope that you will join us for one of our in-person events, so you will get a chance to interact more face to face with some of the other members, and hopefully you'll value in this. Thank you so much.
Will do. Thanks, Michelle. Bye now.